Pleasant good afternoon, pleasant good evening to you and yours. Welcome to another show of Prophecy and Music, Praise and Worship Experience with your girl Malikes. Each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, by the grace of God, we're here. I'm just lifting up worship. We're here interviewing artists and behind the scenes people like songwriters, like producers, managers, all those good needy stuff. But today I have a special broadcast. I have Mashell, who's a producer for KB and Lecrae, and some of the hottest gospel rap artists out there. Funny enough, we went to the same middle school, so it's just a coincidence. It's just awesome that I'm able to connect with him. So that's what we're gonna be so forthcoming today. We're gonna broadcast. We're gonna get to know him a little bit more. We're gonna get to know the nitty gritty things of that producer life and producing for KB and producing for Lecrae. So I have with me today, I have the pleasure to bring onto the show today Mashell, all the way from Florida. How are you doing today, Mashell?
I'm doing pretty well. And you, how you doing?
I'm blessed. Thank you so much for choosing to be with us today. I'm privileged and honored for you to accept my interview. It's been a long time coming since Horseman, right?
Yeah, way back.
Way back. Same high school, not high school, but middle school band teacher, Mr. Allen, and it's good that I was able to connect with you. I saw that you posted. You guys were nominated for a Dove Award, and I was like, "Yo, Mashell, I went to some type of school with him. I was mixed up with between high school and middle school, but we got it figured out." So thank you for coming on the show today.
No problem. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
No doubt. But let's get to know you. Where are you from, Mashell?
Well, I would say pretty much I'm from Miami, but actually I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I moved to Miami when I was about 5 years old, turning six. So basically six. And I've been here ever since. So it's been nice. I'm very comfortable here. I don't think I want to go anywhere else. At least not back to the cold.
But in terms of your ethnicity, what's your background from?
I'm Haitian. I'm
Haitian.
Haitian.
Okay, so
So
sac passe.
yeah, yeah, my boule.
That's all I know. That's
That's the
about all
extent.
I know, right? I mean, of course, you and I, we grew up in Miami. We have to know a little bit of something because Miami's a big melting pot. So
Absolutely.
definitely had to at least know how to greet somebody or salute somebody for sure. But let's talk about your early childhood. Let's talk about some of the things you did in middle school, high school, some of your musical journey. I mean, as a young child growing up, what were some of the things your mom used to tell you? Were you one who used to beat around the pots and the pans and stuff? I know you're not a percussionist. I'm explaining my life, but share with me some of the scenarios that in your early childhood that you had.
Yeah, it was actually quite different. I honestly, when I started out as a child, my first instrument was like violin, and that was when I was like 9 at Miami Shores Elementary. We went to the same elementary school, but prior to that, a lot of my attention and focus was actually art. I liked
Well,
drawing a whole lot. I was in the art program in my elementary school, and I did the strings thing as well. But my aspirations were really probably more aligned, at least that time, to be a artist, like drawing, sketching. And so when I went to Horace Mann, I was hoping to be, in an art class, but like within the first couple of weeks, like they were phasing out the art class in the middle school. So I ended
well,
up having to make a decision in terms of the elective that I was going to pick. And I had the option of being in band or orchestra. And I wanted to be in orchestra because I was already playing the violin for a couple years, but they didn't have any room in the orchestra. So I ended up being stuck in the band class. So not only being stuck in the band class, everyone had like their instrument of choice. I really
mm,
wanted to play the saxophone. But guess what? My luck, because I came late, uh, they needed more flute players, and I ended up being stuck on the flute. And but long story short, I still play. I ended up going to college playing the flute, so it worked out in the end. But that basically was kind of like my upbringing, at least from elementary school to middle school. That's how I really started getting into music. And Lord behold, I don't know if you remember Mr. Pender. Mr. Pender actually
I
at the
sure do.
school had like a MIDI lab, and they did a lot of composing and arranging and things like that. And so I had him as a band director my first year. So I'd
Mm-hmm.
swing by his classroom, and I was just really fascinated with like music and technology. You know, even if I go back and think about like when I used to live in New York, my dad had a computer, and on that computer, like back then, everything was like, it's the '80s, and everything was basically black and white. You basically had that
Right.
black screen with the green letters, but there was a music composition like program on there, and I messed with that a lot. Um, so anyway, long story short, there was kind of things that I had kind of stirring in the back of my mind, but
Right.
initially being a producer wasn't one of those things until later, really like later middle school, and just kind of exposure that I got from the music education that we had at our middle school.
For sure, for sure. And let's continue the journey. Then you went on to Miami Northeastern High School, our rival,
Northwestern,
Miami Northwestern High School. I'm sorry,
Northwestern,
right?
yeah,
Our rival, Miami Central, Miami Northwestern. Never used to click, but you always butt head. But tell me about that journey, because I understood that that journey started from a young child. I mean, elementary school. Didn't get into the arts program that you really wanted. I think that was just destiny. I mean, you may say no, but
yeah.
like it's not destiny. But I just think sometimes things happen where certain doors are
God planned
closed.
it.
God
Oh
planned it,
yeah,
and certain doors are open. He orchestrates things. That according to his will. And I believe that's exactly what happened. The drawing we can still do it on the side, but I think the purpose and the will for his life was for you to go ahead and pursue that music arena and that music career. So we have violin, we have saxophone and flute, right? Three
yeah. Well,
instruments that you
really,
play.
violin and flute were the kind of the two main things. All the other stuff came much later.
Much later.
Um,
Oh,
yeah.
so tell us about the Miami Northwestern High School musical journey experience. I know you were in band there, but tell me more about that.
Yeah, Miami Northwestern. I actually went there because I was, as a kid and even through middle school, was wanting to be in medicine. So they had a great medical magnet program. So I went for the medical magnet, but they did also have a phenomenal performing arts program. And the band director there at the time was Mr. Christopher Dorsey, phenomenal band director. I mean, we had great, great, great bands the whole time I was there. And so just kind of transitioning from Horseman to Northwestern. Another situation, I got there kind of late because really I went there for the medical program. And I got into the band a little later. So I missed band camp and all that, but eventually got into a marching band. And it was exciting. I think around that time, or maybe the year after my freshman year, it was a big thing to have a marching band. The movie Drumline with
For
Nick
sure,
Cannon was
yeah.
like the biggest thing, and everyone was having competitions. So that was kind of like the gist of at least the first half of my high school experience in terms of music. The last 2 years of high school, I actually moved from being in a marching band and a symphonic band, wind ensemble, to playing in a jazz band. And that's what really, I mean, I think helped me tons in terms of like my piano skills and things like that. So I played piano in the jazz band throughout the rest of high school. And I think that really set me up in terms of being able to set myself apart as a producer. Because not
Right.
everyone has that, I guess, formal musical background. So I just really benefited from the theory, being able to read things like that, and being able to implement that in my everyday kind of work environment as a producer.
Right. So wait a minute. You say you wanted to go to medical school?
Yeah, so
You wanted to
I'll
be going.
backtrack a little
Uh
bit.
huh.
So when I was in fifth grade, I remember we had this is like so random. We had a career day. I was always into science, like all the
Right.
way through. We had a career day, and a microbiologist came in. And for some reason, I thought that was the most exciting thing. Imagine, looking through a magnifying glass and looking at germs. And so that was kind of my thing. I just really liked um, biology. I really liked science. I really liked anatomy. So that kind of followed through. I followed that on into high school. And of course, being of Caribbean descent, it's like two jobs you could get. you're either a doctor, right, a
Tell
nurse,
me about it. Tell
a
me about it.
lawyer. So I was kind of following that trajectory. But honestly, I think when I got into like my junior year, I just knew I just wanted to make music. You
Come
know, at
on.
that time, I
Come
had like
on.
my buddies. We started a little record label, and we were putting our money together to go buy studio time and go to the studio out here
Come
in
on.
it's around Aventura area, Miami Gardens actually. And so we were doing that every weekend, you know, putting as much as we can afford, putting our little $20 together.
I hear you.
The studio owner was really nice
McDonald's
and
money, huh?
generous. Yeah, absolutely. And so that was like my real first studio experience.
Wow.
I was already kind of like dibbling and dabbling in like, you know, production with stuff on computer, like these old school like emulations of like the Roland TR 808 and like early versions of Fruity Loops, way before or FL Studio for the producers out there, way before what it is now. But that was pretty
Right.
much my high school experience. Senior year, I was like, I'm not doing medicine anymore.
And your story is a message within itself because you're right. Caribbean descent, African descent. You're not doing nothing in this house other than doctor, lawyer, these big names things. But I think at a point you just identify your calling and your purpose, and you knew it was just music. That you had a birth, that there was a lot in you, and you knew that was your calling, and that was what God has called you to do, right? And I think that's very vital for everyone to find in this day and age. That yes, mom and dad, you gotta honor them. I'm all for that. I'm all for honoring your parents, but then at the end, I think finding God's purpose and an assignment for you, it's of importance. It's of importance. Number one, to obedience to Him, and to you just, I think, being happy in life, honestly. Because when you're in the will of God, it's nothing better than that. I'm sure you can attest to it, Mashell.
Oh yeah, for
Um,
sure. It definitely
um,
came with its ups and downs and everything. But yeah, absolutely. I think my high school, the end of high school, was really foundational for me. Like obviously, our middle school band director, Mr. Allen, we had a great relationship, and he was
right,
always sharing the word with me, sharing the gospel with me,
right.
sharing the scriptures. But high school, what really shifted for me was like a really traumatic experience with uh, one of my best friends, you know, growing up, he was murdered. We just, you know, had a lot of stuff going on. Rival, I guess, gangs or whatnot.
We know about them
People,
in Miami.
you
We know
know,
about them.
beef and all that. And that
Yeah.
was a wake up call for me. So I was like,
Come
man, you
on.
know, how can I use my music to uplift, to encourage? Um, Prior to that, like we were talking about some of everything, gang bang, shoot 'em up, but it really
Yeah.
hit home, and I had a decision to like make, like, am I gonna stay like right here? Like my homeboy just died. Like, if I was to pass, like, am I right with the Lord? You know,
For
um,
sure. For
it
sure.
was it was definitely, and that senior year was like everything. I mean, kind of put everything away and just really made a decision. I want to do Christian music, but I want to do like great Christian music.
I hear you.
Um,
So your transformational point came when your friend got murdered, and prior to that, you were doing like your song, your music, or you're producing music for rappers that talked about girls, money, sex, all that different stuff. So that transformational point shift your focus, and you started producing for the Christian industry, the gospel industry. If I'm
well, so long story short, because there's a lot of pieces to this. Um, I end up instead of going to like a traditional college, I end up going to study recording arts at Full Sail University. And my intent really was to just make really good Christian music. I'm not opposed to secular music
Okay.
in the sense, you know, like just like anti-secular. I just knew for me there were certain things I would do and certain things I wouldn't. You know, I've
Right,
done
right.
things that are not quote unquote Christians. Things for Fox Sports, things on, you know, I've had
Sure.
music on reality TV shows, so on and so forth.
Sure.
But it's different in terms of being able to kind of control the message, at least, you know. But anyway, long story short, I went through that, and then when I finished, I got a great internship. I was actually interning at this studio. It's called Creative Space, and the owner of the studio was Salam Remy. Salam Remy's produced, I mean, tons of hits. Nas, Shook Made You Look, I Know I Can. He did a lot of work with a lot of soca artists in Trinidad. Mashell Montano, Allison Hines. He worked with Josh
Levels.
Stone. Josh Stone. He worked with Amy Winehouse before she passed. Akon. A long list of people. So
Right.
being in that environment and just kind of learning and seeing his process was like, wow, you know. But I didn't have any connects to the Christian industry. I worked at a studio at one point when I was like 19. My next door neighbor was Trina's manager, and we had a good relationship. He was, professing believer as well. He's come out to like my concerts and stuff at church, you know. But I didn't know anyone. Like Reach, the Lecrae's, cross movement was big. I did not know anyone. So all my contacts was really in the mainstream industry. And long story short, I ended up deciding to walk away from, my internship came to a close, and I just knew like I didn't want to be there permanently. So I shifted a whole, that's a whole another 7 years of shifting. But I ended up going back to school and getting my bachelor's in
It's
music.
okay. You got to make that U-turn sometime. My pastor says it's okay. You got to make it.
Yeah. So it wasn't until like later, maybe in my like mid to late 20s, I connected with. I was actually producing an artist, local. It was a group actually called Authentic, and one of my guys, still very good friends to this day, was like the lead artist in the group, and he actually um, made a gutsy call to give me an opportunity to be on like my first, I guess you could say major Christian album back then.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So long story short, again, there's a lot of long story shorts. He had an opportunity to work on an album with an artist, and the artist brought him in as like a writer and also wanted to feature. And he got the records, like the tracks, the beats, and he was like, you know what? My boy said, I'm not really feeling these records so much. I think my boy would do a better job. So we ended up going to work, and we put together two records on that album. One of them ended up being a single, and KB was featured on it. And the artist is named Jason, and he was like the person that put me on. From like that album, and that was like I think we were working like around 2012. From that point, from 2011, 2012, like everyone kind of came after. But it's all been honestly, obviously, the Lord, opening the doors, because there's a
Amen.
lot of
Amen.
people that work for a
So,
very long time,
so
but
let's
don't get that
backtrack for a moment.
opportunity.
You said you started off with Authentic, the band. That band was based in Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, they're in Broward, Miami. It was a rap group, a Christian rap
A
group
Christian
called
rap group.
Authentic.
So
Yeah.
one of the lead got a job to produce something, and they were like, "Nah, I think my boy Mashell would do a better job."
So it was a production. He was writing and he was featured on a project, but he just thought I can come in and make the record better. So that's what ended up happening. And the
I think
artist was
he,
willing to like, okay, if you say it, all right, let me try his hand at it.
yeah. I mean, I believe at that point he was your destiny helper to the bigger projects.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because he
And
could easily said, not normally you don't get somebody saying, "Hey, I think my buddy would do a better job than me." Let's be frank. Let's be honest.
well, not no, well, I wasn't doing a better job than him. He received the beats, right? Because he's a writer. He's a
He's a
writer, not a
writer. Okay.
producer.
Okay.
Yeah, so he just thought that the production, he wanted to rap on better and write on better production. So
I get
he
it.
took a really risky, as an artist, like this is your shot. You're working with a bigger artist. He's putting you on,
Correct.
and you're reaching back and putting me on. Some people might not, take that opportunity and leverage it that way for a friend,
Right. Facts.
and he did
Facts.
that for me, and I mean that changed everything.
Wow. So 2012, your first major opportunity to work with KB. How has it been? What was that?
So
How? Uh-huh. No,
yeah,
go ahead.
so
I know
what
you got a lot
happened?
to say. That's what I'm letting you talk. How has it been? Tell us about the experience you had with KB. The the nitty gritty things that people don't see. What's the experience like working for a gospel artist? Producer for him. I'm sure he's probably detail oriented. Nah, I don't like this, Mashell. Let's do this over. So create that experience for us, so like we're in the studio with you.
Oh man. So a lot of our work, honestly, like especially in CHH, a lot of Christian hip hop, a lot of our work has been like internet based. Yes, some studio based. So my experience, probably more times than not, is I work with like a team of guys. Maybe like I usually work with a writer. That was something I did early on, and I think that sets you apart as a producer because a lot of times artists, you have an artist that have an idea, but sometimes they need someone to kind of go the extra mile to cast a vision, you know? So working with a writer is amazing. There's a lot, to be honest, like there's artists that are phenomenal. They write everything, their own hooks. There's artists that don't. And people just understand like the benefits of collaborating. It's always good to have someone else's ear on something or somebody else's take. So the writer I was working with at the time, my boy Serge, we would just get together, me and him, and kind of put like the ideas of records together, concepts. And then a lot of my work was through A&Rs, at least kind of early on back then. So with the first record that KB was featured on, like I think we might have met like maybe once in person, but it wasn't a direct thing. It was really through the artists that we were working with. So later, in Christian hip hop, the circle's really small. You kind of run into people, you meet people, that kind of thing. So we
Right.
eventually met later after the fact. But honestly, a lot of my work has been like getting together with like my guys. Another writer that I've been working with a lot, at least in the later 2010s, 2016, 17, 18, was Wes Ryder, and he was actually the A&R on Armies. So that's kind of how that came about. I already had somewhat of the record kind of put together. The A&R reached out to me, was like, "Hey, KB wants to do this, and here's his vision. We want to do this." And when Arby's came to me, it's so crazy. He was like, he wants to do like trap meets worship, right? And the
Oh,
record was a Chris Tomlin song. It's actually
yeah, yeah,
"Whom
yeah.
Shall
For
I
some,
Fear" by Chris
right,
Tomlin.
correct. Yeah.
So I got the record together, and some of this happened probably a little bit before COVID, like in terms of finishing the record. I think we were probably in quarantine by that time. So I got most of the record together in terms of like the music, kind of the setup of how everything was going to go. And then my boy, who was the A&R, also a writer, was working on hook ideas, things like that. And then we took those skeletons, and then KB started building on it, and just kind of hearing what he's kicking back. That's kind of how that record happened. And then the next thing, the big part was like Chris Tomlin saying okay to it, okay to us, reinterpreting, using some of his lyrics, because really the hook takes from that "Whom Shall I Fear," and that was just amazing. Obviously, KB was transitioning; he just signed to Sony, um, and so that was huge. That was like his first record out as a
Right.
artist on Sony, Provident. So yeah, there was a lot of things that kind of went into that, just the back and forth. KB is very particular about what he likes and what he wants. He has very clear direction, um, and he kind of sticks with his gut. It might not even matter like what everyone else is saying in the room. If he believes it, he's running
That's
with
what
it.
it
You know what I'm
is.
saying?
I hear you.
So,
So let me just
but
make sure everyone else who's watching this and myself, we understand the element. So your connection came with the writer. The writer said, "This is what I have. This is what I have, and I want you to bring the vision alive." And then he
right.
connected with you. And then the writer went back to KB and say, "Okay, this is kind of like what we have going on, and this is the type of vibe we have with this song going on." So basically, your connection is with the songwriter, and the songwriter connects with KB.
Correct. Yeah.
That's like
Yeah.
the three
Yeah. So the A&R,
main.
like
Okay, the A&R.
artists. Yeah. So a lot of my work is like through the
The
A&Rs.
A&R.
Obviously, I have
Okay.
situations where I go to the studio and things like that. We have sessions. We're trying to connect on a studio session, but like with KB's dates, him being out of town, my dates, the writer's dates, we just could never make it happen, you know. But armies end up working out just regardless. Just phone tag, you know, over the phone, um, back and forth emails, things like that.
Wow, wow. So KB Armies nominated for 2020 Dove Awards. I mean, how do you feel? I mean, when I saw your name, I was like, man, Mashell all the way from Horseman, on levels, doing major things in the gospel hip hop rap industry. So tell me, how do you feel? Like, how's the team feeling? I know you guys are excited. Yeah, how do you feel, man?
Um, I, I, I'm excited.
And that's not your
I
first
won
one. I saw
one.
you had couple of them back then too.
Yeah, so I won one in 2000, was it 15 or 16 for Anomaly, Lecrae's album. I got rap hip hop album of the year, and so I was a part of that, which was crazy because I was actually that album went number one on the Billboard charts, like number one overall. It was the month of came it debuted at number one in October 2014. I mean, sitting number one on top of a lot of people, Maroon Five. I mean, I remember just looking at the list. It
Right.
also won a lot of awards. It won Billboard Christian um, Music Award. Obviously, the Dove. Two records on there won Grammys. So that was just like really crazy. I think for me now, like I don't really relish awards like that. I'm learning. I'm very low key. I kind of live just a very low key lifestyle.
It's
I'm
good.
not
It's
very
good.
active on social media. You know, that's just how I am personality wise. And so being nominated again was cool because the first time I was nominated, I didn't go to a award show. I don't even know. Like it was a lot
Why?
of
Why
things
not?
happening. I can't even remember like exactly what happened. I know ASCAP reached out to me and they were asking me if I was gonna be at there was like a dinner or a lunch or something like that, pre-show lunch. And I totally missed that, you know. And it was just a lot of things happening, work.
Life happens.
And
Don't worry.
yeah, but I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go next time. Last year I got nominated. And this year now we have COVID. So I don't know. Last year we didn't win. I got nominated for being a part of Tadashi's album Never Fold, which was really cool. We had some great records on there. A record with David Crowder and all a lot of cool things happening there. But so we'll see this year. I don't know how it's gonna work. Is it gonna be virtual? But I'm gonna make
I'm
it my
sure.
business to make it.
So let's backtrack to Lecrae. How did that connection come about? Was it like word of mouth to KB? Like how did you start producing for, or had the opportunity to produce for Lecrae?
Yeah, it wasn't word of mouth through KB. I think I was on a Lecrae album before I was ever on a KB album.
A word. So how did that
Yeah.
unfold? Like man,
Uh, so small industry, small circles, and ours. Like
in
I've been
ours.
really
Wow.
blessed to have, and back then they had a different A&R. I've been really blessed to have people in my life to like vouch for me, vouch for my work. And long story short, the
So
A&R was like an
before you proceed, like what are like some people that's watching? What are some things that you've done to make your work noticeable? Not noticeable, but out there. Like what outlets are you using so that people say, "Hey, hi, this is a producer in Miami." Or what are some of those outlets are you using? Who are you connecting with?
Yeah, so it's all word of mouth. Like one thing that people got to realize, I think, is like Miami. Like, although we're not like known for like big Christian concerts and events, you know, it's Miami. People have a lot of other things sometimes that they rather do. You're competing with a lot, especially back then. You had basketball, the big three, and so
Right.
we're not the greatest place in terms of Christian hip hop artists to come and have concerts. It's really hard to really make your money because you know
Right.
a lot of people really don't show up compared to other places like Orlando or places in Texas where
Nashville.
you
Yeah.
have just way more support. So I think just kind of going back, you know, being in that circle in terms of artists, like Miami has. With that being said, Miami has a lot of producers and artists who have had a lot of impact, or in Florida in general, in the market, in you know, in Christian hip hop, because you have KB here, you have Gavi here, you have some of the producers back then. Ty Shane is here, D Flow, Daramola is here, um, other guys, G Rock. So there was a point, I think, especially at a time where people were kind of putting me on, where a lot of the producers that are making some of the biggest records in our genre they were all in Miami. So what would happen is, like, if somebody needed a favor and you came through for them, it was like huge. So the Lecrae thing basically happened because uh, the A&R at the time at Reach Records, he was recording something with these two vocalists that were here in Miami, and I think he had to fly back to Atlanta, so he needed somebody to cover the session. So I think somebody pitched my name in a hat. I think it was Marty from Social Club that made a recommendation or whatever. And so people were already hearing the music that I was doing with Authentic and then the artist Surge. So after I
So
reconnected with
you
the
were working,
A&R,
even though you wasn't with the
yeah,
big. You were working. You were still working, even though you
yes,
wasn't with the big people. You were still doing your thing with the little. Don't
right,
despise small beginning. You know, although they're gonna end up becoming known and stuff like that. But working with the locals and working with the upcoming artists.
right. And they were the people
Beautiful.
that, like, really pitched my name in the hat. The A&R was like, "Hey, I need a favor.
Oh,
Oh, Mashell could probably do it." I did the favor, like recorded these two young ladies, sent the files and stuff to him. He was like, "Hey, by the way, like Lecrae's working on an album. Like, I've heard your stuff that you've done with some of the other artists down here. We would love for you. I would love for you to submit some for the album." And that's how that happened. And
wow,
literally, I was working. I got
wow.
with my writer that I was working with, my boy Serge, and we put the record together, and then being timepiece on that album, on Anomaly, and the album just, I mean, it blew up. It was just the
Yeah.
number one
It was a
album
crazy
in the
album.
country.
Beautiful. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
crazy. For those who's wondering, A&R is artists and repertoire. Basically, A&R scouts for new artists, scouts for new talents. They find them. They're like the middleman. They find the writer. They find the producer. They find the musicians to help the artists. I hope I explained that well for all my
yeah.
non-art students out there. But beautiful, Mashell. So, have you worked closely with Lecrae in terms of, like, have you guys have studio sessions together, or has it just been internet based? Like, how has that been? Like, put us
It's all
in
been,
that shoe.
yeah. It's the same thing, internet
Same
based.
thing. Is
Like,
it internet based?
yeah,
Wow.
you look at even like Drake, even a lot of records that Drake does. Sometimes he's not even in the studio. It's like producers are in different places, especially like this culture now with the internet. You have producers that send out beat packs, and Drake probably go through like, man, I really like this
So
record.
what's the
Let me,
what's the beat pack for those who don't know? And I never heard that term
yeah.
before, so I'm about to learn too. So what's the beat pack?
A beat pack is when a producer kind of puts together, you know, array of maybe like their best tracks to send out to different artists. That's
Okay.
how a lot of records happen in hip hop. Obviously, we do get together in sessions, and I've done that with different people. But at least with Reach Records, I would say a lot of my work has been with the A&R. Like the
A&R.
A&R has been
So if
my
I don't get
best
anything
man.
tonight, if anybody don't get anything tonight, the A&R is a valuable player. It's a key player.
Yeah, they're gatekeepers. Like an A&R,
Whoa.
like the relationship with an A&R could be you being on an album or not. You know, because
Oh.
really, if the A&R is not aware of you, like, you know, I get my opportunities because the A&R looks out or reaches out. Oh, hey, we have this going on. We're looking for these kind of records. Do you have, you know what I'm saying? And if you don't have that connection, like the A&R is not sending emails to everybody and their mothers. They're sending to people that they trust who can get the work done, you know?
Right,
And so
right,
that's what it's been.
right.
Obviously, there's other people that I've worked, you know, one on one with, like Derek Minor. You know, we've been in the studio, Garage. You know, so there's definitely artists that I work one on one. We create, like, kind of in that space, but a lot of the work, you know, is done internet,
Remote,
like tons
remotely,
of remote.
right?
Yeah.
Right. Awesome. So let's move on. What are some of your influences? Who influenced you as a producer, as a musician too? You know, who are your influences?
Yeah, I have a lot of influences. Everything is eclectic for me. So, although maybe a lot of people know my work, in terms of Christian hip hop, I've done work with pop artists. I've done work more on the like Caribbean side. Um, so I think I take influence from a lot of places, like hip hop, like the Kanyes of the world. I grew up listening to a lot of this producer No ID and Just Blaze. That's what I really loved. But then I loved, the Rodney Jergens of the world. I loved a lot of classical music. I like, Percy Granger. I like Bach. So it's a mix of everything, and I think I try to put some of those things in my music. Um, I'm just kind of it's just for me. I can't say it's one source. It's just different depending on the season. Sometimes that I'm in. Sometimes I hear like a classical piece and just feel really inspired. Um, but definitely, it's some of everything. I would say the greatest influences, at least for a long period of my life, was Kanye for sure. Like all throughout high school and early college was definitely Kanye. Now, there's a lot of great guys out there. So I'm just hearing, I just like different textures. So I'm kind of picking a little here, a little there, a little from everyone.
From everyone. Awesome. I should have asked this question prior to this question I just asked. Like, let's stress on the importance of networking because what I'm understanding from the music industry, from the business end of things. I mean, I just been in it for like 3 years, but you've been in it longer than me. Networking is very important because what I've understood from what you just told me is that within your little circle have gotten you to a bigger circle. So, I mean, from your perspective, from your eye view, your eyeball, let's talk about networking. How important is networking for somebody coming up as a young producer, even an artist, that they should horn on to that tool and definitely grow it?
Yeah, man, I'll be honest, like I'm not so much like an amazing networker. Like literally my situation, I'll be honest, like God did it, right? I don't really go out talking to a whole bunch of people. I'm not very like vocal on social media. One thing I do is I try to treat everyone well, whether it's an artist that has 100,000 followers, a million followers, or someone that has 30. Just try to
Whoa,
treat everyone the same,
whoa,
like, and the reality is you never know like where people will be. And there's guys that reached out to me that I've worked with that, end up getting deals and getting signed. And because I was just cool, I showed up to one of their shows. Maybe they had like 40 people there, 50 people there. But I just chopped it up with them,
support.
talked with them, support. If they ever needed anything, hey, I have like this record. What do you think about it? Those kind of things. And then later on, you look back, that same person that you saw back then is now like 29,000 followers, or they got signed to a label. And that's happened to me before a couple of times.
Whoa, whoa. So what I'm understanding is treat everybody fair, no matter
Oh, yeah,
known, unknown, title, no title, level field, playing field. That's
for
beautiful.
sure.
That's beautiful. What are your future aspirations? Anybody out there you see yourself or you desire to work with?
Man, that's a good question. Future aspirations. I don't know. I just want to make music on my own terms, how I feel, like how I
Nice,
like it.
nice.
Um, People to work with. I don't know.
Or produce
I would
with.
like to do like more with like TV and movies. Like I had an opportunity a few years ago to do the music for sports analyst Chris Broussard. He had a show on Fox Sports, and Fox Sports One, a podcast, and somebody that pitched my name in a hat, and he allowed me to do his intro and outro music for it, which was like huge. But definitely maybe more like sync licensing, like that TV trailer world. I would love to be
Right,
involved in that.
right. But in terms of like the artists producing for any of like even the Christian artists out there or CCM artists, anybody else you desire or look forward to, producing for?
It's hard to say. Like, of course, it would be cool to work, with Lecrae again. Um, there are some things I think that happened over the years, just even like how Christian hip hop and CCM have collaborated. Like the whole Chris Tomlin thing. I did a record
Yeah.
that had David Crowder on it. Um, so I think just kind of maybe broadening my horizons in the CCM space. Um, but definitely I want to do it where it's authentically me too. Obviously, you could curtail to the artists and their needs, but I want to, yeah, kind of create a soundscape maybe where I can fit in that space. Um,
Wow.
but like one individual artist, not necessarily. I feel like maybe there's an artist that will come up that I'm like, yo, I really want to work with that person. Right now, I just want to work with as many people as possible and enjoy doing it. It's no specific person, I would say.
Yeah, you should think
Uh,
about the Afrobeat artists or the industry, I should say.
hey,
I know a couple of artists, I mean, from what I'm here, I mean, they would love to hop on any of your
hey,
beats, So, have you produced?
listen, I'm with it. My wife is always pushing me. I've messed around with Afrobeat for sure a little bit. I've done things at least with an island vibe. I did a record with my boy, some buddies of mine, some friends of mine, called "Hold You Down," the Raj, and that was a really cool record. It appeared, a couple of places, made it onto a TV show, Ball in the Family reality TV show with the Ball family, and that was really fun. And it's an island vibe, totally island vibe. So I'm down. I'm just
Yeah,
trying to get
man.
my skills together because you know that it's an art in itself. You can't just jump up and do Afrobeat.
Right, right.
There's
But like you
it's
said,
technical.
you want it to come from the heart, and you take a little bit from this type of style of music, a little bit of that style of music. You just bring it together and you create your own flavor. I mean, it's a beautiful industry, and I definitely know some upcoming Afrobeat artists as well as known Afrobeat artists. That if you want to spread your wings a little bit, we can definitely make it happen for sure. Um, well, we got a couple more minutes before we end the show, but I wanted to just ask you this question. I know you're a professor, you teach music, your husband, and you are a father. Like just talk about balance in life, and you work with you get all these major projects just come through with these artists like KB and Lecrae. Just how is it like for you just managing and juggling, about 5, 10 different hats?
It's a monster. I thank God for my wife. She's really supportive. It
Wow.
takes. I can't like think about our artists. Definitely pray for them because they have to travel and they have to leave and go on tour. Right now, things are shut down. People are not doing much of that.
Right.
But ideally, their normal situations. Some guys are on the road a whole lot. I'm
Right.
home. I do a lot of my work from home. Sometimes I may have to go to the studio here or go to a session here or there. Um, but even in that, that's time away from family.
Right.
My band program takes a lot of time, especially if you want to do anything excellent. You want to do it at a high level. It takes time. So it definitely is a monster juggling. I can't do it without the support of my wife, and you know, you really have to kind of make decisions together as a like, hey, this is coming up. How do we fit this in the schedule? With everything that's going on with family. Obviously, when you have a child, post COVID, you're talking about, her being online and virtual. So I couldn't do any of that stuff without my wife's support. I mean, she holds it down. So I'm so thankful for her.
Wow. Shout out to the
She's
wifey. She
been
hear
nothing but a
hear
blessing.
this. For sure. But before we leave, what are some attributes or nuggets you would tell one coming up in this industry as a producer, as a artist and repertoire, A&R, as a business manager, as any of those umbrellas that we have in the music industry, what are some tips would you give one? And I know you said a lot about just in terms of like the umbrella networking, but from Mashell to everybody that may be listening, what are some key factors or key attributes that you will leave with us and say, hey, like in this industry, X, Y, and Z, X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, definitely humility. That's huge. Like, I've seen guys that have been, as a musician, even being a church musician, like, I've seen guys that have had a lot of talent, but you don't really want to be around them. How you carry yourself, goes a long way. I think people just recognize genuine, humble people. That will set you apart, just off of that alone. And then secondly, like, just kind of being in the know, like what's happening, what people are doing. Sometimes, like people will hear the record but have no idea all the people that are involved in a song, right? Even for armies, if you look at the credits in armies, there's a bunch of us on there. Obviously,
I noticed
I was a producer, but there was
like 5 other producers on there.
Right, because you had Chris Tomlin, and he wrote the original song with someone else, and then so it's a whole team. So definitely getting familiar with some of the people that might not be in the forefront, because really they might have your next opportunity, and just being able to kind of, if you ever get the opportunity, be able to communicate with them, and knowing who they are is like really important. Social media, I can't tell you how many guys I know that have connected with people and have found opportunities just on Instagram, just reaching out on Instagram. It actually happens. I'm not saying that's the ideal platform, but because people get a lot of DMs, you don't want to be that guy to overload people, but that does happen. And then the last thing I would say, obviously the humility part comes down with seeking the Lord and just trusting in whatever the Lord desires, His plan for your life. Like, I couldn't have planned this. I'm not a great networker per se. I'm not very vocal or out there social. I'm probably one of the most low key producers I think in our genre, but I've been here for a while. I've seen guys come and go.
Wow.
But I think I've been here because I think I try to treat people well and, just be a genuine person. Like, I'm not really for the show and the clicks and the likes and all that stuff.
I hear you. That was high school, right? That was middle school. We're done with that age, right? But I'm just bugging. I got 2 more questions before
Some people
we leave.
aren't.
2 more questions. Like, are you open to working with upcoming artists?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, for sure I am. It's like case by case basis, obviously, and I have a load right now.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, so, but I'm open. At least I like meeting people.
For sure.
I'm always meeting people here and there. So
for sure. So if anybody hit me up, I'll tell them at least just start a friendship, start a relationship, and see where it goes from there. And probably you make it for them or not.
Yeah, just hit me up. Yeah, just hit me up. And it depends, like when you have a lot of things going on, like the thought of adding something else to it is like,
I can imagine. So are you currently working in a future project for KB or Lecrae or any of the artists that you work with?
Even if I was, I can't even say that.
All right, I'm sure, right? I should have knew that.
No, but I'm working on music. I'm working on music right now. So I have some things that I'm juggling. We'll see.
Nice. It's
a long process to be on an album.
Wow, amazing. My last question, put us in your shoe of your creative mode when you're about to create a beat or go into producing. Take us to that element. What happens? So we're in your world. We're in your shoe. Take us to that element of you working with. I'm sure you're not working with Fruity Loop anymore. You're probably working with Logic. Take us to that element.
Yeah. So I love I love. I who was behind me? I grabbed his name here. This is my best friend. I'm really big on. I'm old school. So I when I used to work in intern, I used to work at the studio. I used to use the MPC back in the day. So I was real big on like these drum machines and things like that. So now technology has been so amazing that they like combine this with like software. So I basically run this stuff like with Pro Tools, if anyone's familiar with that. And so that's kind of where I start. I don't really start with drums. I'm a melodic person in terms of my thought, and my melody informs my drums. So my drums are based on what I have going on melodically. A lot of guys like working on drums first. For me, that's just not like it. Just doesn't really work for me like that. So pulling up a keyboard and playing, going through some sounds, seeing like what sounds kind of trigger me and inspire me. I probably never make the same track every time I go in. Every time it's a different experience. So
Really?
when people ask me, "Hey, I want a record like what you did for Lecrae or KB or Derek Minor or Flame Tadashi," I'm like, that was kind of like that situation. That's what happened
Right.
there. I
Right.
just don't. It's not like I'm
You're not gonna duplicate the
making
same
carbon
thing that you
copies
did
of a
for.
bunch of
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Nah,
Wow. So every time you go into the studio with something fresh, fresh from heaven, fresh manna.
fresh,
I love it.
fresh, exactly.
I love it. So yes, the walk us through. I mean, you start off with your pad, hook up Pro Tools. Everybody know that's a producing software system that helps you produce beats. Mostly run on Apple for those who don't know. And take us to the next elements of you just sitting down creating music.
Yeah, so a lot of times, for most of my career, I've pretty much worked with artists and labels. So I've never really had as much time to just make tracks for fun. That really happened for
Ah,
me during COVID. Like now I'm just kind of like being home and just kind of making a lot of tracks for fun. But most of the times I'm actually going in knowing that I have, a brief that came in and records are looking, artists are looking for records that have this kind of feel, that kind of feel. So
right.
sometimes some of that is already dictated when I go in. Um, but I just like zoning out, headphones. Um, I work anytime, middle of the day, at night. It doesn't really affect me. I like working from home. For some reason, when I go to a
Really?
studio and I work on something and I bring the idea home, like I take my sketch ideas and I bring them home, I'm just able to do so much more with it. And so
Wow.
people know that about me. So
Wow.
sometimes I don't really prefer like that whole big studio vibe. I just kind of like being in my by myself kind of element. Um, no one really bugging me. Sometimes not having an artist there where it's like, oh, you're kind of wondering, do they like that sound? Should I change it? Kind of take
Right.
that out, you know,
Right.
and you bring back what you have. And like, look, this is the idea that we initially had. This is how I expanded upon it. Um, and one random thing, I don't always finish beats. Like some people think. So talking about the difference between a producer and a beat maker, there's a lot of people that make beats. They'll crank them out, beats, 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 beats. But I like the lyrics of the record informing my production. So I would have a scratch idea. Maybe it's bare bones. Sometimes maybe it's piano, light drums, whatever, or just kind of a loop. And I like the artist to record on it, send me back his vocals, and then I work with like his acapella and build everything around that. You
Wow.
know, and that happened
Yeah.
too with like armies. Like when we got to the later phases of it, I had KB's vocals, and I was like, I'm gonna put this here, I'm gonna put this there. He's saying this at this part, so let me curtail like the record to the emotions of what he's given us, the message.
Yeah. Well, did you work on that KB Oceans Crowns? That was dope.
No, no, no,
Yeah.
no.
Actually,
Yeah,
I
I
think
know
my
the guy that did. Yeah,
my pastor on here, he's the one who introduced me to it. Shout out to Chief Elder Samuel. When I heard that, I was like, yo, this got some vibes. This got some vibes. Okay,
yeah.
but Army's got some vibes too. I love it too. But Mashell, I want to thank you so much for taking the honor to be on here with me and to just talk one-on-one, get to know you, get to know what's happening behind the scenes of the Christian music industry per se. So yeah, we're about to exit, but if you had to, I want you to encourage that person who's listening to me, who knows that music is their calling, their purpose, but is hesitant. From Mashell to that person who's hesitant, what words are inspiration and what words would you use to encourage them to go full throttle? Like you had to decide, man, medicine is not for me. So go ahead and share.
Right.
Share.
I was hesitant. You know, and it wasn't for, I thank God for people that God has brought into my life to encourage me. There's just people along the way like, man, you ever thought about sending your music to reach? And I was like, you know, you never know. Ultimately, I believe this wholeheartedly. People say, and it sounds so cliche, like what God has for you is for you. It's true. It's 100% true. I can't tell you that it was my networking or anything like that. So if I can encourage you, just trust in the Lord. Work, you know, keep your nose down, work on your craft. Trust the Lord. The results ultimately are up to Him. You know, He opens doors, He closes doors. And I can tell you, I'm a real life testimony. I knew no one in the Christian music industry. I was around a lot of people in the mainstream industry, you know, but God eventually opened that door. It took a long time. It took probably from the time I was at Salam Remy's studio to my first placement, it was probably 8 years. That gap, you know. So trust the Lord.
Yeah, I agree with you. I can totally attest because I mean, Mashell know my days in Miami. I mean, I knew all the soca artists. Then boom, came to Boston, gave my life to Christ. I knew nobody. And then like 7 years after, I finally got my foot in the Christian industry. So you're right. He opens and he closed doors. But beautiful. I love it, Mashell. It was sweet and short and straight to the point. I want to thank you so much once again for coming out. I know you're a busy man. I mean, have family, producing, and a lot of things going on, teaching. I'm blessed and honored to have you come on. And God bless you. And may He continue to, you know, elevate you. In your little corner, in your little humble corner, He continue to elevate you. For those tuning in, it's the end of the show, unfortunately. This was Mashell, the producer for KB and Lecrae, who was on with us today. And by the grace of God, we're going to be back here on Saturday. Till next time, stay blessed and definitely listen to Armies. Hopefully they win. We're believing they will win a Dove Award 2020. And that was the producer, one of the producers on it, Mashell. So until next time, stay blessed. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.